So today I'm talking about every crack is an opening. And I am returning to Mark Napo. So this is from his August the 5th little article that I want to share with you. When in the midst of great change, it is helpful to remember how a chick is born. From the view of the chick, it's a terrifying struggle. Confined and curled in a dark shell, half-formed, the chick eats all of its food and stretches to the contours of its shell. It begins to feel hungry and cramped. Eventually, the chick begins to starve and feel suffocated by the ever-shrinking space of the world. Finally, its own growth begins to crack the shell, and the world as the chick knows it is coming to an end. Its sky is falling. As the chick wiggles through the cracks, it begins to eat its shell. In that moment, growing but fragile, starving and cramped, its world breaking, the chick must feel like it's dying. Yet, once everything it has relied on falls away, the chick is born. It doesn't die, but falls into the world. The lesson is profound. Transformation always involves the following away of things that we have relied on. And we're left with a feeling that the world as we know it is coming to an end, because it is. Yet the chick offers us the wisdom that the way to be born while still alive is to eat our own shell. When faced with great change in self and relationship and our sense of calling, we somehow must take all that has enclosed us, nurtured us, and incubated us, so when the new life is upon us, the old is within us. So I've thought about that a lot because the human situation and circumstance of birth is exactly the same sort of thing. And I consider it to be the original cause of our fear. How interesting it is that we find ourselves in a very uncomfortable, inhospitable environment at the very last toward our birth, and we actually are just squeezed and tossed away from the place that we had felt so safe and so content. So no wonder we're so fear-based as human beings, because we are tossed out of Eden. And here we are in a new world. And when I was doing hypnosis, I had an occasion several times for people to return spontaneous to the time of their birth and be horrified and frightened beyond belief of that very situation and circumstance, to be squeezed out of Eden. So for every crack is an opening, and we can use that knowledge and that wisdom. I wanted to share with you a story that I found really profoundly moving on America's Got Talent. I don't know how many of you watched that. I don't, but somebody sent me a video of it, of a fellow named Drew Lynch. And Drew Lynch was a young, successful baseball player. And he was, according to him, quite a snot, because he thought he was so much it. And then a ball took a bad bounce and hit him in the throat. And he was profoundly injured in that he stutters horribly. And so in America's Got Talent, he is a humorist, a stand-up comic, using his stuttering as his humor, talking about how difficult it is at a drive-in, trying to get the orders straight especially since he was the one behind the microphone. Now, I'm not ridiculing him. I'm just telling you he's funny. And then the other part of it was that he sounds a lot like a GPS. Because by the time it gets make a U-turn. So I don't know where he stands in the America's Got Talent, whether he's still there or not, because it's not something I usually watch. But he certainly is an example of someone who found the opening in a crack, who absolutely took a really negative, sad circumstance and turned it into something of value. And he considers it his life work to help people understand that even under the worst of circumstances, even under difficulties, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and there is some gift behind it that would allow him to call up humor. And I said to someone a couple of weeks ago that to me, nothing is so serious that we can't laugh about it. And then the laughter, it is so healing. There is nothing that is so serious that we can't laugh about it and make fun of it. There was, I can't remember who, I didn't write it down, who wrote this line, but I love it. It is that the gift of grief is incalculable in giving you back to yourself. The gift of grief is incalculable because it gives you back to yourself. So we remember the nature of our essence when all circumstances and situations take us back to the very root of who we are. When we are absolutely in that cracked space, we have an opportunity to remember the truth of our being, that we are God's essence, the divine made whole. So it's not about metaphysical guilt, and I want to get really clear about that. It serves no purpose whatsoever for us to say, oh, what could I have been thinking? Because that's not the issue. It doesn't matter. What you were thinking is never going to help you find the crack in the light in the crack. So it's not about, oh my gosh, what could I have been thinking? Why did I create that for myself? That's not serving a purpose. What serves the purpose is looking for the light in the center of it all and doing the next right thing, doing what is in front of you to do, shifting circumstances and situations around so that you can find the light in the crack. And there always is one. There always is one. So there's a Danish proverb that I like a lot. It says, the gem cannot be polished without friction, nor may man be perfected without trials. None of us move forward when things are going smoothly. None of us move forward when things are going smoothly. It is only when we have the friction of strife and tension and disquiet that causes us to move forward. It forces us to find the light. So when things are going smoothly, we have a tendency in our humanity to just become very complacent. It is only when we have difficulties, when we have challenges, when we have upsets, that we are forced to grow. We're forced to find the light. We're forced to find the value in it all. And I'm reminded of the Tao symbol, the circle with the black and the white, the yin and the yang. And in that symbol, there's always a circle of the opposite. So in the positive is the egg, the circle of the negative. It's always there. And in the negative, there is always the circle, the egg of the positive. That's how our lives are balanced. In the negative, there's always a positive, and in the positive, there's always a negative. And to know that, and to seek out the light in the darkness, to seek out the light in the crack, is how we move our lives forward. Not by blaming ourselves, not by saying, oh, what did I do to create this? That's not the issue. Some of us went Friday night, or last night, I guess it was, to Don's book launch. Now this is such a wonderful example, and I started reading it. It's very light reading and very entertaining, and she dedicated it to us, the center, because she used the principles that we follow. The title of it is, I Said, Camel, You Gave Me Cancer. And I just am so impressed with the way she has taken the principles of our teaching and put them to work in her life, literally. And she is such an example of someone who found the light in the crack. She has, more than anybody that I'm familiar with, taken these principles, applied them in her life, and really made a difference for herself. And I think she's made a difference to a lot of people, because this is a book of hope, and it's a book of humor. It's very funny, and she has used these principles to find the light in the crack. So I encourage you to, we're going to have another signing here, and I encourage you to just take a look at it. I'll leave it up here, and you can look at it and enjoy it. So in my family, camels are really important. When things were really going poorly for many of us in my family, I mean, it was just, everybody was a wreck for one reason or another. And my sister said, she was watching television one day, I think maybe like Lawrence of Arabia, and there was a picture of a camel struggling across the desert. And she said to herself and to the rest of us, well, be glad you're not a camel. And so from that line, every time we've had difficulties in my family, every time we've had struggles or strifes, that was the catchphrase, be glad you're not a camel, because we don't have it nearly as bad as those poor creatures do. So from that place of strife and difficulty, we were able to find humor. And from that place of strife and difficulty, we were able to bond as a family, which unfortunately wasn't always the case. But the troubles that came to the family, she was being divorced, our dad had died, our grandmother had died, I was out of work. It was just like, be glad you're not a camel. It could be a lot worse than that. She also was dating a fellow who was German, and he said, well, just remember, Rebecca, things can always be a lot better. and truly that is so. So when things are really terrible, when you are really cracked and broken, you can always look for the light because it is there. And I highly recommend the use of humor for finding those cracks. So I love you all. You are the light in my life. You are the light in my crack. And don't be safe. So, I love you all. Namaste. So I'm going to invite the practitioners to stand and join with me as we turn to prayer. And you know, laughter is a certainty that spirit is close. So I allow myself to turn within, to settle into that space where the light is never dim, where the light is bright and pure, where God resides within. I allow myself to settle into that space where laughter heals, where laughter reveals, where in the difficulties, the falling away of all that I know, when change is pushing against me, I allow myself to find the light, to be filled with the certainty that all is well, to know that I am never, never alone, that God is present always to support me, to love me, to guide and direct me in my next right step. I hold my heart open, knowing that any place that I am in life is the place that I need to be. There's no thing to regret, no guilt to be had. I allow myself to be comforted, to be embraced, to be loved by the divine and the expression of the divine in all things. So in great joy, great peace, great humility, I just lean into the one that I know is always supportive and present for me. I give thanks that it is all perfect. And I invite you to own that for yourself by declaring it and enjoying me by saying, and so it is.